Welcome to this edition of the Ocean Blue Happy Hour, collaboration with the Women's Aquatic Network on the Circle of Mentoring, leveraging mentoring to build an aquatic career. We are so excited to have Jaya and Lauren on behalf of the Women's Aquatic Network co-hosting with us. My name is Rennie Myers. I'm a physical scientist with the National Science Foundation and a co-host of OBHH, which is Ocean Blue Happy Hours, a bi-monthly session where we get together to learn about a new topic in ocean sciences, how it's been impacted by the coronavirus pandemic, and connect with new people in the field. My co-host is Emily Petrolia. Emily?
Hi everyone, I'm Emily Petrolia. I'm the president of ESP Advisors and co-host of these Ocean Blue Happy Hours. I'm also a board member of the Coastal Society, which is another great group for aquatic careers and mentoring. So I'm happy to answer any questions about that going forward, but back over to you, Rennie.
So part of the reason why we started doing OBHH was because as the pandemic was altering the way that we conduct ocean science and advocate for ocean conservation issues in the United States and globally, part of what we wanted to do is just get people talking to each other, especially early career folks, but from across all career stages, to learn about the work that was happening or not happening in our fields. And mentoring was one of the many themes that came out of that is critically important in one of our diversity, equity, and inclusion focused happy hours. And so that's part of why we're focusing with the Women's Aquatic Network to bring you this happy hour focused on mentoring, which they had the great idea to pursue. Lauren, do you want to explain a little bit more about what we'll talk about today?
Sounds good. Thanks, Rennie. And thank you all so much for joining us. It's really exciting to see everyone here. And I am Lauren Linsmeyer. I work as a professional staff member on the House Science, Space, and Technology Committee. And I'm also on the executive board of the Women's Aquatic Network, or WAN, and we're super excited about this collaboration with Rennie and Emily of the Ocean Blue Happy Hour today. So briefly, WAN is a nonprofit based in Washington, D.C., whose mission is to bring together professionals with interests in marine, coastal, and aquatic affairs and promote the roles of women in these fields. And while we're called the Women's Aquatic Network, membership is certainly open to all gender identities, and we are committed to creating a diverse, equitable, and inclusive space for all. And I'm so glad to have you here. I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Jaya.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining today. My name is Jaya Ghosh and I'm a Legislative Affairs Specialist with the Maritime Administration and a member of the WAN Executive Board. 2020 actually marks WAN's 35th year, so we've been around a while. And while a lot of progress has been made since 1985 in elevating women to leadership positions within the aquatic fields, this year has also shown us that there's a lot that's left to be done in the next 35 years and hopefully sooner. We hope today's discussion will show how mentorship can be a tool to achieve a more just and equitable society. We have an excellent lineup of 5 speakers with us today who will be introducing shortly and look forward to a great discussion.
Thanks for joining.
First, I'd like to introduce our speakers for their opening remarks. Our first speaker that we have is Maria Dahlberg, who is with the Board on Higher Education and Workforce and the Committee on Women in Science, Engineering, and Medicine at the National Academies. Maria was the study director for the Academy's 2019 report on the science of effective mentoring in STEM. And so over to you, Maria.
Well, lovely. You just gave some of my time back from my 5 minutes because I had actually scripted out those remarks myself. So yeah, I had the honor of serving as the study director for the report we released last fall on the science of effective mentorship in STEM with 2 M's. I do have about 5 minutes to give you just a tiny taste of what that report found, but I encourage you to take some time and look at the actual report itself, which you can find at nap.edu/mentorship in STEM. We also have an online guide available under the resource tab there, which is maybe a little bit easier to digest than the, I have props, 300-page plus book itself. So one of the things you'll notice, the first thing you'll notice maybe if you ever study mentorship, is that every paper begins with a definition, and each of those definitions are different. The committee that wrote the Science of Effective Mentorship in STEM looked at those definitions and the theories and the evidence behind them and develop their own definition based on that evidence. And their definition is as follows. Mentorship is a professional working alliance in which individuals work together over time to support the personal and professional growth, development, and success of the relational partners through the provision of career and psychosocial support. And I really want to highlight three main features of that definition. First, the working alliance. That means it involves mutually setting goals and working together to accomplish those goals. Second, relational partners. This means it's not a sage bestowing knowledge and wisdom upon a younger person. It can be many people working together. It can be a more cohesive whole. And finally, it includes both career and psychosocial support functions. I'll also note that mentorship has many overlapping features with teaching, with coaching, with advising, with many of these other functions we think of, but none of those actually fit with the committee's definition as it's laid out. The committee also found that there are several key elements that mentorship has, including the development of trust in the relationship, self-reflection on the part of the mentors and the mentees who are involved in the relationship, setting explicit expectations and boundaries, preferably in writing, and the participation in mentorship education, because sort of above all, mentorship is a learned skill. Additionally, mentorship can occur in stages. Some, like the initiation of the relationship and the cultivation of the relationship, seem fairly self-explanatory as we consider what mentorship might involve. Others, like separation and redefinition, often seem sort of counterintuitive when we think about what the true understanding of lifetime mentorship is. I'm happy to talk more about what the elements and stages of mentorship, as well as tools for helping to facilitate mentorship are. But in the interest of time, I'm going to move on to talk about the role that identity plays in mentorship. So mentorship is a social relationship. And as such, identity, which is the composite of who a person is, the way they think about themselves, the way they are viewed by the world, the characteristics they use to define themselves, identity plays a pivotal role in the social relationship. Specific dimensions of identity, such as their science identity, cultural identities, they have been empirically linked to academic and career development and to the experiences of mentoring relationships in STEM. Students with identities that are not well represented in STEM can feel othered, can feel isolated, and culturally responsive mentorship can help increase feelings of inclusion and belonging. Culturally responsive mentorship is a set of learned skills in which mentors, regardless of their race, regardless of their gender, show interest in and value students' cultural backgrounds and social identities. As the chair of the committee used to say, and probably still does, no one is off the hook. It may help, culturally responsive mentorship may help students navigate invalidating experiences in academia. It can affirm the sense of belonging in STEM, and it can reinforce their belief in their own abilities to be successful in STEM. By engaging and affirming cultural identities, mentees do not feel like they need to check themselves at the door and may experience less identity interference. That's when the performance of one identity that somebody holds is understood to interfere with the performance of another identity. Their science identity interferes with their performance of a cultural identity, for example. Identity interference can lead to depression, reduced psychological well-being, and lowered academic or professional performance. The committee explicitly recommended that all participants in the mentorship ecosystem, that's administrators to mentees, professional societies like the ones here today, should recognize that identities influence academic and career development and are thus relevant and significant for effective mentorship. For example, this is just one of the sub-recommendations that they highlight. Mentors should learn about and make use of inclusive approaches to mentorship, such as listening actively, working towards cultural responsiveness, moving beyond colorblindness, intentionally considering how culture-based dynamics like imposter syndrome can negatively influence mentoring relationships, and reflecting on how their biases and prejudices may affect mentees and mentoring relationships, specifically for mentorship of underrepresented mentees. I can go on and on, but I'm pretty sure I've reached my 5-minute limit. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria. Thank you for starting with some foundational knowledge about what mentorship is and how to define it. Next, we have Helen Brohl, who's the director of the U.S. Committee on the Marine Transportation System. And more interestingly for us today, she's also one of the 3 founding members of WAN in 1985 and serves on the WAN Advisory Board. Over to you, Helen.
Thanks so much for the invitation to be with you tonight. Obviously, I'm a longtime member of the Women's Aquatic Network. And I don't think I can say often enough that the reason it has survived 35 years is because of the amazing men and women who have continued to be engaged in WAN since we started in 1985. I certainly haven't been here since the beginning. I've been flowed and back again, and an honor to be on the advisory board. So I really appreciate the fact that Maria started this conversation with the more technical perspective. I couldn't agree more that there is extraordinary responsibility from both the mentor and mentee if you engage in that kind of a relationship. But I'm going to give you more of an experiential kind of perspective and perhaps a more informal perspective. I have mentored through both formal arrangements. I've mentored for a number of years with the Ohio State John Glenn School of Public Affairs and the Washington Internship Program. I've had a number of Knaus Fellows in my office, and I believe that in many cases we've had a very positive mentor-mentee relationship that has continued beyond their time with me. And then also I've met a lot of people through WAN events, folks who wanted to chat with me, talk with me, get some advice from me, and vice versa. And I'm not going to reflect so much on what it was like when I was young to be a mentee, because I think things evolved so much more since when I was young. We're freer to talk and converse with people and share more of ourselves. When I was young, I was probably more reticent to be totally honest about things. And I'm so grateful that we've moved beyond that to have more of an open relationship. But if I could go away a little bit from sticking to the term mentorship, and think a bit more about how you have a relationship with someone who guides you. The reason is because I think there perhaps are less opportunities to have a mentor that lasts you throughout your entire career. People move from their jobs, they move on, they change, their interests change, and as a result, I think it's less likely, although not without precedent, that if you're looking for a mentor that might be your mentor and guide you for 30 years, probably not as likely to happen. And it's a lot to ask. It could evolve that way, of course, but I think it's rather a daunting thing to ask. And so I hope that when you go into it, you're not thinking, gosh, this person can get me from the beginning of my career to the end of my career. Frankly, if you want me to do it, I'm probably going to be dead by the time you get to the end of your career. I think for me, informally, a mentor, a definition of mentorship is really the relationship which really meets your needs at the time, where the relationship is more where the experienced, more knowledgeable person helps to guide you. But really, if it meets your needs and it meets the mentor is willing to fill those needs, I think that is really where it fits. I appreciate, again, that there is responsibility associated with that relationship that you have to take seriously, and that there are certain boundaries in that relationship. But if, in fact, what a mentor is seeking for their professional development and what a mentor can provide meets mutual needs, then I think that mentorship is appropriate. Let's see, sorry about that. And my point is, I think that each of us have had moments in our lives when we know someone has given us guidance. Now, maybe that guidance has been a one-shot deal, but it was profound to you. You know, maybe you've had a really big impact on the way your career developed. Was that person a mentor? Maybe, perhaps, but maybe it was just an opportunity where opportunity and expertise kind of meshed. So perhaps mentorship is really about more than just that one-shot piece of advice or that one-shot opportunity to ask for a piece of advice. I think we're talking about, I agree, about guidance over a period of time, but I don't think that has to be for a long period of time. Someone could be your mentor over a summer internship, and it could be extremely valuable to you. It could happen during the year of a Knaus Fellowship, and it can happen over a longer period of time. But it does evolve. So I just have a few thoughts about it. I think it's really important to be honest about what you expect from a mentor, and for the mentor to be honest about what you can expect from them. When we established the WAN in 1985, we really did it to develop a network to kind of promote and support men and women in the aquatic fields. I don't think we thought specifically that we can all mentor each other. But in fact, when we got a lot of experienced people in the room with a lot of inexperienced people in the room, it was a natural environment to have mentorship. So in some respects, I think of WAN, and when we get together, as kind of a gaggle of mentors and mentees who get together. And you may not talk to the same person every time, but you may talk to folks in different times and different people that provide kind of this broad mentorship and guidance at a moment that might be important to you. And then you can also ask those folks to meet with you separately to perhaps follow on with some advice they have. So here's just a few quick thoughts. I think it's important in the beginning not to go into a mentor-mentee relationship looking for a friend. There's someone that you can socialize with on a regular basis. I think you need to have boundaries that are comfortable for both of you. As an older person experience, if I went around saying, hey, I'll be your mentor and be your friend, you think that might be a little creepy. But also, if you are looking for a friend in a mentor, it might be disappointing. Of course, a mentor-mentee relationship can develop into a friendship, and I've had some that have, and I really. And all of us have moments when we feel stressed or distressed in our professional life or personal life, and it clearly can impact our enthusiasm or performance at work. I get that. And there are times when you might want to ask a mentor to help guide you through how to get around those stressful times and manage the workload or manage something from work, especially if it is the source is work. But a mentor is not a therapist, and it would be really inappropriate for us as a mentor to give you information about something that is incredibly emotionally challenging for you that may be outside of our area. You probably wouldn't want to take my advice on some things, probably wouldn't be helpful to you. And I think a mentor has a responsibility not to give guidance that might mislead somebody. Now, I say that, but I can often be kind of a mom-like mentor, and in that respect, I probably go with those boundaries and do mom-like advice, which is probably not appreciated. But for the most part, please don't look at mentors as a therapist, because I think it could be disappointing for you.
Thanks, Helen. This is, I was going to say, as someone who has benefited from your mentorship, I really appreciate all of this guidance. I think we're going to move on to our next speaker, which is, and I hope we can get the other tips from you, Helen, during the Q&A as well. Our next speaker is Padmini Nidamolo, who's the co-founder of Lean and Agile for Women and an Enterprise Agile Lean Transformation Coach. Over to you, Padmini.
Thank you, Jaya. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. And in the previous speakers have shared such valuable insights about mentorship. And, I'm a co-founder of an organization called Lean and Agile for Women. And this is for women in lean organizations, agile organizations, to come together and share and support each other to be stronger as a group, because we all know the power of the whole is much more than the sum of its parts. So we have a concept called offer seek in our organization, and ours is a not-for-profit organization, and it's a community building organization. And we realize that anywhere we go, it could be in the workforce or in the leadership spaces, space for women is limited, and it's limited by our own internal barriers and external barriers. So myself and my co-founder, we brought this organization together and built a framework called Offer Seek. And this is about just-in-time mentoring, because all of us know the typical, the conventional mentoring that we all know is a little bit long-term, right? It could be a quarter, a couple of quarters, or sometimes it can go for years. We realize that many of us seek just-in-time mentoring. It could be for a particular challenge, problem, or a conversation you want to have with somebody, or an article or a blog that you want to write. You need that mentoring just for that purpose, for that season, for that topic. So just-in-time mentoring, as we, some of you might know, it refers to, the guidance and the help that the mentee needs at that time alone. And it also encourages the self-driven learning and exploration to take the control themselves. So this is the mentorship for the right time, not necessarily for a long period of time. So there is no huge commitment that is expected of you. And it is a lighter version for both mentor and mentee. And a typical mentor gets you from point A to point B, but it might be time to reach out to someone new who will help you reach your next milestone. So the same mentor might not be able to get past all the milestones that you're visualizing for yourself. So just-in-time mentoring is, the benefits are immediate, and it also helps you reach that goal quickly, efficiently, because it's very pointed. And you can develop a culture in your own organization by getting the just-in-time mentors for learning and collaboration. So our framework is very simple. We built a huge Trello board, and we are geographically distributed. So every geography has its own group of women coming together. And we built a very simple Trello board. We have cards in the offer section. We have cards in the seek section. So offer section has something very simple like, hey, I can offer mentoring on how to be a speaker in conferences. Maybe you have a story to tell. And anybody can come in and add their names to that card. And I get to see all the names, their email addresses, and I can say, hey, every Tuesday from 6 to 6:30, I'll offer 4 sessions. So it's as simple as that. It's very topic specific. So we believe and we heavily advocate that no offer is too big and no seek is too big to ask. So it is a very transactional but very impactful mentor-mentee relationship. So and also, one more thing, our motto is together a group of women. They have the ability to enable each other and create spaces where all of us can contribute to each other. So it is also the belief that we all have within our own group to really make each of us very strong. And another concept that we have in this framework is the personal board of directors. And typically, we advocate each of the women in these spirals. By the way, spirals are groups within Lean and Agile organization who come together on a cadence. So personal board of directors is for each of you to build your own team. We call it the Team U. And the purpose of this Team U is to build an army for yourself. So you can recruit a coach, you can recruit a mentor, counselor, subject matter expert, and a reviewer for yourself. And with the help and support and guidance of that team, you'll be able to achieve anything that you might want to, really chase. And also the concept here is many of us are very apprehensive to reach out to somebody and ask, to mentor, to coach, to counsel us, because our internal barriers tell us that they will say no. And we fear that fear of rejection. But you'll be surprised how many women will be willing to say yes if you ask. So all that you need to do is to ask. and you can build your own team, a board of directors, and that team will actually enable to push you forward, chug you forward to reach your destination. So as with any agile organization, lean organizations, you might know that we are all about incremental planning, incremental delivery. We pause, we reflect, we inspect, we adapt. So we do everything in small increments, because large increments lead to waste and possibly and potentially revamping the whole thing. So you do a little bit with just-in-time mentoring, pause, reflect, inspect, adapt, and go to the next increment of it. So check us out. I put the link in the chat here. Our organization is leanandagile.org. And anybody can form these spirals across the world, and we have several spirals across the world. So feel free to reach out to us if you need any help at all. Again, we are a nonprofit community building organization. Thank you. Thanks, Jaya. Over to you.
Great, thank you so much, Padmini. I'm actually going to be introducing our last two speakers. So our fourth speaker is Hope Cupit, President and CEO of the Southeast Rural Community Assistance Project. She's also involved in a mentoring program called Young Professionals of Color, which she'll introduce. All right, over to you, Hope.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm coming from a different perspective. I am coming from just speaking from my own personal background of what I never had. I never had a mentor. So growing up, I had a what you call, I'm gonna phrase it this way, an indirect mentor. So I would watch what other people did and how successful they were, and I just tried to follow suit. And that led me to end up going to college. And I was a little cocky when I was in high school. I said, I'm only going to apply to UVA and James Madison University. I got accepted to both. I did choose the best one, which is James Madison. And I'm very happy to have graduated from that school. Even going to the school, we didn't really have anyone there. No professors that looked like me that could help me further. I was an accounting major. So just really had to pray and get myself going to learn. So give you a little background about the company I work for. I work for CERCAP, which is a part of the RCAP network. There are 6 of us in the country. And what we do is we help low-income people who don't have access to clean drinking water. So that's another topic in itself. If you would love, you can look online and check us out. We cover the entire United States, the Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico, and we do a lot of work around equity, environmental justice, and bringing clean drinking water. So let's go back to the mentorship. So after college, for me, I started working, and I love what Helen said about mother figures. So when I got to work, I had a lot of mothers telling me how to get ready for work, because I was always late for work. I could not get to work on time, and they said, you better get here on time because you could get in trouble. So just someone looking out for me and helping me to improve. So I'm not late to work now. I do get to work early and things like that. Also learning how to speak to others. I really do care about seeing people become successful, because if I can do it, anyone can do it. And most of the people that I mentor now or have mentored have been young men. I would love to have had a female, but in the line of work I do, it's mostly men in the field. So I've mentored people in the accounting field, and I've also mentored people in the water and wastewater field. And that's how I got introduced to the young professionals of color group. I was one of the first mentors in that group back in 2016. At first it was just it was just really casual. We just got together, spoke to the mentees about what they wanted, introduced them to other people that can help, in their careers. And now it has really evolved into a organized, and Curtis can tell you more because he came out, I believe, after I did, a very organized group to help people build job skills. So it's really focused now. And it's really a good program, especially for folks that are in this particular space. So I would encourage any of you, and it's open to anyone that wants to get involved. They realized it was hard matching people up with certain people because everyone just didn't have a lot of people of color. But as long as you're willing to help, we would love to have you join our group. The one thing that we do provide, we provide everyone with a guideline on how to mentor your folks. And so they try to match you up with people that are close to you. So like Helen and Maria said, don't look for friendships, just look for someone to help guide you. I think that's the most important. You cannot think that you're going to be best friends. I'm an old lady. I can't be friends with a young man. I can help them. I can help guide them and get them to where they want to be. And that's what I'm here for. And I love to, when we get to the other part, the question and answer, to go into more about my experiences. And thank you again.
Great, thank you so much, Hope. Really glad you all are here. So last but certainly not least is Curtis Bennett, who's the Director of Equity and Community Engagement at the National Aquarium in Baltimore, Maryland. And Curtis is also involved in young professionals of color as well as other mentoring programs. And so now I'll pass it to you, Curtis, to talk about mentoring.
Okay. Just also want to echo everyone's sentiments of just feeling really appreciative for being a part of the conversation this evening. As many of the panelists know, mentoring is something that I'm so incredibly passionate about. That idea and opportunity to really give back, to pay it forward. Because the idea that it takes all of us to help support each other, to ensure that we're all getting to where we want to go in our respective lives. And I would ask that, as we think about the importance of mentors, it's an important time to self-reflect, to really think about your life story. We all have life stories. They're all very unique. They're all very powerful. And we have to continue to take the time to share those. Because when we do share those stories, we connect in very powerful and unique ways. And when you think about your stories, think about who were the mentors that played a role in that story. How did they play that role? What type of impact did they have? And why did that really resonate with you? And so, with that, I'm going to start with a bit of a story of my own. That for me, one of the first mentoring moments that came to mind was in college. So I went to University of Maryland, College Park, go Terps. And I originally came into school as an animal science major because I knew I really loved animals and I enjoyed wildlife, and being in nature and spending time outdoors kept me whole. But I wasn't really exposed to the career opportunities in the conservation and environmental field. So I didn't really know what was really out there until I was in it to know. And so I thought to myself, well, let's start with vet medicine. Turns out I didn't really like that very much. I respect that field a lot, 100%. I have friends that are in the vet field, animal science field. However, I found out that it wasn't for me. It wasn't a field that wasn't home for me. And it was really a mentor that I had known for many, many years that really sat me down, and he said, Curtis, I've never really seen you struggle like this before. And I really was. I was trying everything to get it. Getting all the help from the faculty, teachers, other students, it just wasn't clicking. And he sat me down and he said, Curtis, of course, life is never easy. But when you're in the right space, things come that much easier for you. And it makes sense when you think about it. It did, I admit it didn't make a lot of sense to me in the moment. But, looking back on it, it really does, because it's much more natural to you, right? And when I transferred out of animal science into environmental science and policy, into a wildlife ecology and management program, I instantly felt home. And it was all because of that one conversation with a mentor who took the time to have that conversation with me. That really helped. And what's really important is I can recall saying just how much I appreciated the fact that he took that time to say thank you, or to take that time for me. And he said, Curtis, well, I really appreciate your thanks here. The one way that you can really say thank you is to pay it forward, right? The same thing that that he just did for me, always make sure that you're doing that for other people. Like, that's the best way of saying thank you. And so it's been something that mentorship has been so valuable to me since then, and continues to be now. You know, as Lauren mentioned, I'm also part of the Young Professionals of Color mentorship program. I've been in that program now for 4 years, and 2 years as a mentee, and 2 years as a mentor. And what's really interesting about this, and it aligns a lot with my strengths, we recently have done a lot of strength finders work at the aquarium. 2 of my strengths are individualization. So I really enjoy building individual relationships with people, because we're all different, right? The relationships we have with different people are going to be different. And I'm a learner. And, you know, the one thing is that, you know, even as a mentor in a relationship, it's a two-way learning street. And that's something that I work with my mentees to set that from the start. But certainly as a professional myself too, like, I also have to invest in me and make sure that I'm doing what I need to do to learn and continue to grow. So I seek out mentors as well, continue to do, and will always do it. One thing that I used to do, and I admit that I don't do it as well now, things have been a little crazy busy, was to really reach out to a new professional in the field monthly. Someone I hadn't had a chance to sit down and talk with, just to get to know them, get to know what they're about, how they got to where they are, any tips and advice. And that's something that, you know, thankfully, like, my boss has been really supportive of. So it's been really important to kind of see that transition between being a mentor and a mentee, and it's a dynamic one because it's always there, right? It's never like you're in this phase and then you transition to a mentor and then that's that. Right? You're constantly bouncing back and forth. And I think that's what makes mentoring so exciting. The other thing to consider is, you know, with the mentors that you're seeking to engage, thinking about the different sectors or fields that you're a part of. And I try to do a bit of both. So, you know, I certainly work in the marine conservation sector and also the zoo and aquarium space. So there's an element of relevancy and relatability when having a mentor that's also been involved in that space, because they just get it to a certain degree that maybe someone else wouldn't. I've also had mentors that were in similar roles or positions or similar ages, because there's that, again, that level of relevancy and relatability that was there that I really connected to. So for example, I have a really good colleague that's in a similar role as me, working on equity work, and we talk all the time, just bouncing ideas off each other constantly. And I would say too that it's just important to always recognize that balance of the mentors that you're engaging with, and that connectivity to the interests that you have, or the interests that in the work that you're doing as part of it. The last thing I'll say is, you know, it's, as many people have mentioned, it's important to set those expectations across the board. Because every mentor-mentee relationship is different. Right now, I have 2 mentees through the Young Professionals of Color mentorship program, one from 2 years ago and one now. Both of our relationships are very different, different people. And it's up to me, like I've said it, like I have to be the one to adjust based on what their needs are. It's not me like sticking to a certain strategy and just saying like, this is Curtis's strategy and that's that. Like, we've got to adjust to make it relevant and relatable to everyone involved. So thank you again so much, and looking forward to the Q&A.
Great, thank you so much, Curtis, and to all of the speakers. So next, what we're gonna do is for the next 10 minutes or so, Jaya and I are going to moderate a discussion with our speakers, followed by around 10 minutes for an audience Q&A. That will be moderated by Rennie and Emily. So we'll direct these questions at all of the speakers, and anyone who would like to answer may, of course, answer, but I think we'll limit it to maybe 2 speakers per question. So our first question is, I'm wondering if you could give us more guidance for those of us who are in a position of maybe transitioning into becoming a mentor. Maybe we're between this mentee-mentor place, and we're finding ourselves in mentorship roles more now. And what characteristics do you think make a good mentor? I know we've talked about some of these in your remarks. And how does one really learn or practice that So maybe Helen, since you've served as a mentor in many different capacities, would you mind starting?
Yeah, thanks so much for the question. Um, I guess a person can say to themselves, well, you know, I think I've got enough experience. I'd like to be a mentor. I think sometimes it happens accidentally. You find yourself with a colleague or a friend or someone you're networking with, and you find that you can provide some guidance because of your experience that you may not have thought that you had. And so then it evolves kind of naturally into perhaps to a mentor relationship. But to Curtis's point about the responsibility of a mentor, if you do take that role, it's important to recognize that you have done that. I think it happens, and so naturally sometimes we don't realize it's become that it's not just like our friends hanging out, having a glass of wine and talking to each other, that it can be very much more mentor-mentee. It's important to recognize that in yourself, and that there is responsibility associated with that.
Great, thank you. Would any of the other speakers like to go into more maybe qualities of being a mentor or making that transition?
Yeah, I'd like to chime in a little bit as well. I think that even when you're a mentee, there's actually some really great programs and opportunities out there to learn about mentorship through mentorship education programs. There are some that are focused on mentees. There are also a number that are out there that are focused on mentors. And there's some preliminary evidence, a lot of them have been actually looked at empirically in terms of how they can improve mentorship. And there's some preliminary evidence out there that even as a mentee, taking mentor education programs can improve your mentoring relationships. And as been mentioned by almost all of the panelists right now, you know, at some point you're going to be a mentor, at some point you're going to be a mentee, at some point probably you're going to be both simultaneously. So learning some of those skills and some of those attributes can be really useful, and having, you know, some of those formal education skills. Some of them are, you know, facilitated classes, and some of them are just online courses that you can jump on. We've outlined some of them in the online guide that we've put into the chat box. If you want to take a look, most of them are available for free or for cheap. If you want to take a look and see what they're like, they're really fantastic courses.
That's great. Thank you so much, Maria. And we will be sending out a list of resources after this discussion as well for everyone. So second, we wanted to ask, you know, right now as a nation, we're currently having critical and long overdue discussions about issues of racial injustice and systemic oppression in our country. And many organizations and institutions are looking inward to create a more inclusive culture and opportunities for all. I'm wondering, how can mentoring be used to create more diverse and inclusive institutions and support the development of people in underrepresented communities? I don't know if Curtis or Hope, with your involvement in young professionals of color, would like to go first, or Maria, from your academic perspective.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thanks Curtis so much. I just wanted to say that we've been speaking about diversity and equity since I was in college. I've been out of college for almost 30 years. The problem to me, we're not intentional enough about it. We're not giving others a chance or opportunity to get engaged and involved because of whatever reason, and I can name 1,000 reasons. Better suited, doesn't fit the mode, doesn't have the experience. Well, we're gonna have to give those folks some time to get engaged and learn the field. I myself was, I'm an accounting major, and when I applied for this job, one of the things was, oh, she doesn't know anything about environmental science or water or, you know, plumbing issues, housing. but they gave me a chance. And through my leadership skills and other qualities, I was able to learn how to do the work and how to manage people and manage the organization and have a voice. So did I need to have all of that water experience? No. Just give people a chance and become intentional in what we need to do. That's where we need to go. And Curtis, what did you want to add?
Yeah, I just, mentoring is huge in that space. And just to make the connection to understand even how to navigate spaces and navigate certain cultures, organizational culture, like, I think it's really, really important. And, I can remember sitting down like with mentors as I'm like going through my path as a professional, say when I've experienced a microaggression or at work or through different other channels, like even just helping to navigate through some of those things has been really, really important and very powerful to help guide there. I think the other thing that's critical, especially now, and I've had these conversations with my mentees recently, has been just the navigation of change, of creating change in our institutions so that they are more equitable, they are more inclusive, they're more just in what they're doing and who they are. And so, just helping people navigate, like how do you continue to be a change agent within your organization? What are the pitfalls? What are the walls you might run into, right? And then also have that support system to say, you're going to run into walls, but we're here to pick you up. And we're going to help you push even further beyond those walls. And I think that's been really important now.
The only thing I will add to this sort of like really fantastic points that have been made is that in mentoring relationships, by and large, the mentors are the ones that have the power. While, they can serve to help mentors or mentees figure out ways to navigate the power structures that are already in existence, they can also help figure out ways to break down those power structures so the mentees don't have to change themselves to fit, but they can change the power structures that are in existence so that they accommodate the mentees, which I think is what's really going to be necessary in order to break down the systems and have those systems actually be inclusive and not just have the mentees adapt to the pre-existing structures that really aren't actually all that great. I think that it is behooving the people in power to actually recognize where that power exists.
Thank you all so much.
Could I add to the comment?
Yes.
I come from the maritime transportation field, which is anecdotally not at all as diverse as our nation. There are programs around the country to promote diversity in the business. It's one thing to reach out, bring people in to learn what it's about, have internships, but retention remains to be an issue. And that's where mentorships are hugely important. But you have to train the folks, whether it's industry folks or federal folks or wherever that you're placing folks for these internships or fellowships or apprenticeships, that they need to do more than just throw somebody into a situation. Mentorships are hugely important, but my point is it's also important that there is training for the mentors in that circumstance so that they understand the situation and that they in turn, like Maria said, can help change the internal culture. So retention and growth really comes from that relationship.
Yeah, one of the things that we talk a lot within our mentorship circles is that diversity in a lot of ways is an outcome. Sustained diversity is an outcome of work that's really embedded in inclusion and equity. So removing the barrier, being aware of the barriers and then actively removing them such that, you're ending up with very inclusive spaces that helps to promote diversity within those spaces. So, helping mentees kind of, have those conversations within their own organizations and, how to work through those systems, which can be really tricky. I mean, even for me in my role, like, my supervisor is a great mentor for me. She helps me, help me navigate like our senior level leadership and just how do I frame this? How should I not frame that? I run into walls all the time. It's just part of the thing, right? But I know people are there to help pick me up when that does happen and are right there to push again through it, which is great.
Hey, Lauren, this is Hope. I just want to say one more thing. Maria touched on a point about, I don't want to say she said the word conforming or adapting, but I always found myself being the only person of color in a room typically. I just made myself present. I just was there. I remember I put myself on a board and even they were asking, how did she get on this board? But I put myself there because I felt like I needed to be there. I needed to have my voice heard and the people that I represent heard in that group. So I do believe that just putting your best foot forward and doing that and listening to those around you can help you grow as a person. But I've always said, once people get to know you and who you are, it really doesn't matter. But you have to get there first. And that's the point that I want to make. Thank you.
And if I may add, to what Hope just mentioned, I totally, agree with you. Many times we are probably the only person of color in a situation, but I think it is also about education. It's a two-way street. And many times I had the opportunity to explain about my culture. What's a joke for you could be offending to me and vice versa. So it's always good to open it up and educate them that, hey, what you're talking about now, conversing about now, I can't make any sense out of it because I didn't grow up in this culture. Excuse me, can you please share? And many times they're very open about it, very welcoming about it. So it's also about educating each other and also, being inclusive intentionally. Somebody were adding that in the chat. Be inclusive, and it's a business imperative. It's not a nice to have anymore, right? It's a must have. And I've always told my team, who are 99% women, my organization is, women predominantly. I always tell them, if there is no space at the table, bring a folding chair. You have to have a chair, period, right? Whether they give it or not, or whether you're bringing it, just make it possible.
Great. Thank you, Padmini. This has been such a good conversation. I'm going to shift to our next question, kind of related to the coronavirus related world that we're living in too. And coronavirus has shown us that, and completely shifted our professional and personal relationships to virtual platforms, but has also provided the opportunity to connect with more people across the country geographically, or across the world as it may be. How can we find and maintain relationships with mentors during the COVID-19 pandemic and in a more virtual world? And maybe Padmini, you want to start with this based on your experience with moving some of your programming virtual, and then we can go from there.
Absolutely. In fact, it opened the horizons, literally, right? So especially with the spirals that I was sharing with you all earlier, spirals are groups, geographically based groups of women coming together. But since COVID happened, we opened it up. We said it's a virtual spiral, it's a global spiral. Anybody, as long as your time zones are permitting, join. And what that really did for us was it actually connected us cross-cultural aspects as well, right? We now have much more appreciation of what folks from other cultures, other dimensions, other organizations, politically, culturally different, are coming together. But from those are emerging the mentoring opportunities, right? If I'm culturally suffering in an organization and somebody somewhere had solved for it already, in their organization, I'm able to seek that mentorship and say, hey, again, we are huge into just-in-time mentoring. Hey, I've had the situation, the scenario with this person or this organization. Can you please help me, decompose that, disintegrate that? So it's been tremendous. And I think all of us should leverage this opportunity to open up and then seek that mentorship from across the globe.
Thanks. Would anyone else like to talk about networking in a virtual world? Or
I
mentoring in a
would.
virtual world?
I
Go
keep,
ahead. Go
but
ahead.
okay, Curtis. No, your turn because we both have the same pink. So you go first.
The I think it's certainly something that's doable, for sure. I mean, I think just a few weeks, what was that, almost a month ago, I guess, the Coastal Society had their Margaret A. Davidson Professional Development Workshop. I know the other day I was matched up with a couple of mentees through that program. So, I think it's something that, you can still reach out via email to people to, inquire about spending some time virtually, like whether it's on any of our virtual platforms. We can have phone calls as well. I have phone calls with mentees all the time. And there's still ways to meet new people through opportunities like this, through events like this, other workshops or even conferences that you might be engaging in that have different breakout sessions, and just being able to reach out and talking to people about who you want to know more about. I think the question earlier, the comment earlier about just how do you approach having a mentor is asking the question. The worst, I always say the worst someone can say is no. And it's important to be able to first at least reach out to kind of start some of those conversations.
I just want to add, and I don't want to step on Hope's toes if you're wanting to add something, but a little bit of a less positive aspect of it, and it's just sort of a personal observation is, so it's not from the report, and I do have to make that disclaimer, since the report was definitely pre-COVID, but the report does call out the need for psychosocial support mechanisms, and that, is making sure that your mentees, as you're engaging with them, are doing okay. And a lot of people are not doing okay right now. And that is particularly true for students as they're moving forward. Their anxiety levels are going up. And I agree with Helen that you're not supposed to be your mentee's therapist, but checking in with mentees, especially because, the way that you're connecting with people have probably changed. You're not bumping into the halls with them. You have to be more intentional about your communication methods. So those are all things that need to be considered with the existing relationships that you have, let alone finding new relationships. That would be my only sort of just make sure you're checking in with the folks that you already have.
Thanks, Marie. The only thing I wanted to add was I check in at least once every few months with the people that I have been engaged with, and I'll offer any support I can. I'm featuring one of our mentees in our news blast to help them to reach out to folks that they may not have been able to seek, and if they're looking for a different career. So anything that we can do that we have access to, I'm willing to do that. And also, this COVID-19 has gotten a lot of people in deep, depression about it. So we've been having support groups around other groups that I'm with to talk about that, so that we've cried together. So if you listen to one another and just kind of uplift and be there for them and let people meet them where they are, I think that's what all of us can do at this point. And thank you, Jaya.
And just to echo that too, I think that's huge. And personally, I know, aside from COVID, but even just the recent racial injustices that we've been experiencing, it's been really hard. It's been, there were a couple of weeks in there where it was slow going a lot of ways through that process. And it was those relationships with my mentees, but also the mentors, where we're gathering together, we're having those conversations, we're setting that space just to express how we're feeling, and how we're navigating that in our personal lives, but also in our professional lives too. And that's been really important and very powerful to be a part of that.
Thanks. I just wanted to wrap up the Q&A portion of today. I know we could keep going forever and I wish we had the time. And maybe I'll start with you, Curtis, is on the topic of setting expectations and boundaries when entering into a mentor-mentee relationship. How does one set expectations and boundaries with a potential mentor and mentee, especially in places where the mentor or the mentee has a different identity than the other person in that relationship? And I think we'll just have Curtis, if you have time to answer that, and then we'll kind of wrap up and head to the breakout afterwards.
Yeah, when I think about the mentor-mentee relationship, I think it's humility, I think, is really important, and being in a space to learn. So when you come in with a learning mindset and a growth mindset, you can create open space for conversations, for collective learning. And it's really a transformational relationship where both individuals grow and learn as a part of that, not necessarily a transactional one. And so that's how I've generally approached things. It's always an open mind. It's always being humble, and it's always willing to learn and willing to grow. And you set that culture from the start within that space. And then, then things start to open up really well, and you start to have very authentic, deep, open conversations.
Thanks. So I think that wraps up our Q&A. Rennie, handing it over to you.
Lovely. Thank you, everyone, for your time. That wraps our formal agenda, and we hope you'll stay for networking and further discussions in our breakout.